All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Okay, a lot to do today. To thank our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tammuz. To thank Adam and Yudit Benzev for dedicating all of these shiurim and drashos this month in honor of their children. Jake Sarina and Rosie. To thank our Daf Yomi sponsors for today, Sammy and Malka Esterson, Rachel and Alan Rosenblatt, and families in honor of Mr. Morton Esterson's 95th birthday. Incredible, Sammy. Please convey our deepest mazel tov wishes to your father. Should be gebenched ad mea ve'esem shanim tovos. Incredible. We should all be zocha. We should all be zocha to make such dedications. Truly beautiful. And also, of course, we dedicate our learning this morning le'aliyas nishmas Paul Kalish zichron levracha Melech Yona ben Yidel Dov, whose niftu's levayos is today. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, his neshama will have an aliyah and his family a nechama. So with that, let us begin. A lot to do today, Baruch Hashem. So today's daf is Ayin Gimel 73. We are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Ayin Beis with Beis 72b, and we are picking up at Rabbi Yonasan. Is that correct? Rabbi Shmuel, good. Rabbi Shmuel sounds good. Thank you. Am Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Am Rabbi Yonasan. My dichsiv. So what's the meaning of the pasuk? With the Gemara quotes over here from Mishlei. Lama zeh mechir biyad ksil liknos chachma velev ayin. So Rabbi say, what does this mean? Now, literally, the pasuk translates, why do you need money in the hands of a fool to purchase wisdom velev ayin? But yet he has no heart. Says the Gemara, woe to the enemies of Talmidei Chacham. So also remember again, we've seen already a number of times that expression, son'ehen shel Talmidei Chachamim, which ultimately means what? So people who are the antithesis of a Talmid Chacham. Woe to the ignorant, she'oskin b'Torah ve'ein b'am yirah shamayim, like who are people who engage in Torah, but do not have yiras shamayim, do not have reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it's a very profound idea. Torah, see, on one hand, there's a value of learning just for learning, right? No matter what my kavanas are, not kavanas are, at the end of the day, if I'm learning Torah, Baruch Hashem, that's an incredible schos. On the other hand, for Torah to truly be impactful and meaningful, a person has to possess yiras shamayim. A person has to possess a sense of reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person has to possess reverence for Chazal. A person has to possess reverence for Torah. Machruz Rabbi Yanai, therefore again the Gemara says that Lamaisa, a person who learns Torah without Yiras Shamayim is like a person ultimately again who has money but nothing to buy. Nothing to buy. So you have Torah, which is money, but you have nothing to buy. Or I should say, you have Torah, but you don't have the Yiras Shamayim. So Machrez Rabbi Yanai, Chava al delesle darta, v'tara ledarte avrabo. It's a very profound statement. Rabbi Yanai says, woe to the person who doesn't have a courtyard, but yet puts up a fence. Right? In other words, putting up a fence is only meaningful if you're enclosing something. So the Maisa, the Gemara says over here, Torah is like the fear. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, on left-hand column, third line down, Dartas Chatzer, V'tara Darte Avid, Shatorah Ein Elashar, L'kanis Bali Yiras Shamayim. L'chin Tzarash Taktim Lo Yiras Shamayim. So also this is incredible. Torah is not an ends. Torah is a means to Yiras Shamayim. Torah is a means to a relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam. So if all I have is learning, but that learning doesn't yield a relationship, then unfortunately, again, you know what that's like? It's like having a very nice entranceway, but nowhere to go. Right? Being dressed up and nowhere to go. It's having a gateway, but ultimately no chutzner. Both is such a profound idea. As important as learning is, it is not the ends, it is the means to Yiras Shamayim. And if my learning doesn't lead me to Yiras Shamayim, both say it doesn't mean the learning is insignificant. Chas v'shalom. Anytime a Jew learns Torah, it's significant. But Lamaisa, it's not what it could be. It's not what it could be. Amar Luhu Rav Rabbanan. The Matusa Menaich Rava said to the rabbis, I beg of you, Lo sirsun tarti Gehenim. Do not inherit Gehenim twice. Now, what does that mean? Look at Rashi. Tarti Gehenim, Lios Yegeim Va'amelim Batorah Ba'olam Hazeh, V'lo Tekaimuha, V'tirshu Gehenim B'moschem, U'b'chayechem Lo Ne'anisim Ba'olamchem. Let's listen to this. So Rabbi said, I beg of you, don't inherit Gehenim twice. Meaning what? if you learn Torah in this world, and at the end of the day, you don't use it to acquire Yira Shamayim, not only will you not get Olam Haba, but you'll lose out on enjoying Olam Hazeh. In other words, we'll say, if a person is not going to learn Torah correctly, you might as well at least enjoy the party here, right? Because the afterlife is not going to be that great. But Lamaisi, you might as well at least enjoy Olam Hazeh. So Rabbi says the problem is sometimes people lose out on Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. They lose out on their Olam Haba because they don't learn Torah in a way that cultivates Yirah Shamayim. And concurrently, they also lose out on Olam Hazeh because they deprive themselves of all the pleasures because they think that that's in line with the Derech HaTorah. So Rava says, we'll say such an incredible yisod that boils down to the basic idea, it's not just what you do, but it's how you do it. So learning Torah is important, but how you learn Torah, and why you learn Torah, and what my goal through my learning is just as important, if not more important, than the learning itself. And I will say, I think that I've always felt is like one of our one of our contemporary challenges. Because Torah is so accessible to us, like it's never been before. We live in a golden age of Torah learning, where no matter what your background is or isn't, you can learn whatever and whenever and wherever you want. It's truly incredible, which creates an interesting challenge for us about what our goal of learning is, right? What is the tachlis? When I sit down and I learn, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? And I think that sometimes we forget about Hashem in the midst of our learning. I'm learning a lot. I'm covering a lot of ground, ingesting a lot of information, but God is not necessarily along with me on the journey. And that's what Rav is saying over. That's the Gemara is saying over here. You have to make sure that the Ribono Shel Olam is part of your Talmud Torah. Amr Yoshua and Levi, my dichsiv, v'zos haTorah shesam Moshe. What's the meaning of the passage that says, this is the Torah that Moshe placed. Zocha na'aselo samchayim. If a person is Zachar, in other words, a person learns Torah in the right way, then ultimately Torah becomes an elixir of life. Lo Zachar, if Chas V'Shalom a person is not Zachar, which again Rabbi say means that a person at the end of the day doesn't learn Torah with Yirah Shamayim, and doesn't learn Torah in a way that cultivates relationship, then Na'asis Lo Sam Misa. Then Torah can become an elixir of death. See, I will say now, which is also an interesting statement. So really, like if I don't learn Torah Lishma, so suddenly again it's an elixir of death, meaning if I don't learn Torah in a way that cultivates Yirah Shamayim, that's a negative thing? And the answer is yes. I will say, because I'll tell you why. If you don't learn Torah with Yirah Shamayim, a person see, and I will say it happens all the time. We see things in the Gemara, or we see things, right, and we see it all the time in Gemara, and statements or stories or episodes that you kind of like scratch your head a little bit. You're like, really? Really? Is that like, is that actually, right, Chazal are saying that? So I will say, if you learn Torah with Yirah Shamayim, you're humble, and you say, okay, Chazal are much smarter than me. The Gemara is much more ancient than me. The wisdom of the Ribono Shel Olam defies my comprehension. If you don't have Yirah Shamayim, then you're cynical, jaded, sarcastic, and dismissive often of what the Torah Kedosha says. And once that happens, then it's Samamoves. Then probably better not to learn. Because ultimately, again, the Torah that you're learning not only is not helping in your spiritual development, but it's stunting your personalistic growth. It's a profound yisod. Because we've seen many Gemaras throughout our journeys in Shas together, and a couple of them kind of left us with raised eyebrows. And it's very instructive to see how we deal with those moments. Do I humble myself before the Torah, before Chazal, before the Gemara, or do I go ahead and deride and dismiss? If I humble myself, then Torah is a samachayim. If Chas v'Shalom I deride and dismiss, Torah Chas v'Shalom could become the samamavis. That's what Rabbi said. Person who is proficient. Uman means a craftsman. A person who is proficient. The Torah becomes literally, again, a life-saving medicine. A person is not proficient, and in this case, the proficiency is with Yirah Shamayim. Ultimately, again, Sama de Musa can become an elixir of death or a medicine of death. The pasuk says, literally, the statutes of Hashem are correct. They make the heart glad. Am imras Hashem tsurufa. Literally, again, the words of Hashem now both say tsurufa means to smelt, like you smelt iron. It smelts. Shavuot says, so that sounds like it's breaking something down. So on one hand, you're telling me that ultimately the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu make me happy. Then it's the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu smelt, right? Melt down. So the Zocha misamchaso, lo Zocha tzrafaso. If a person is Zocha, Torah gladdens me. If Chas v'shalom I'm not Zocha, Torah Chas v'shalom could smelt me. Rish Lakish migufei dekra nafka, Zocha tzrafaso l'chaim, lo Zocha tzrafaso l'misa. Rish Lakish says, no, either way, Torah smelts you. Also, what happens when you smelt iron? You're melting it down in order to make something great. So Torah has the ability in a positive way to melt me down. If I'm Zocha, melts me down to go ahead and make something great. And if I'm not Zocha, unfortunately, it just melts me down in a negative way. But I'll say an incredible, really incredible yesod, which is that halacha l'maisa, it's not just the learning, it's how we learn. And what's our goal in learning? Right? If the goal of learning is Yiras Shamayim, I want a relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam, and I want to appreciate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I want to have an enhanced reverence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the best way to do that, ultimately, again, is through Torah. That's my kavanah. Of course, in addition to knowledge, and in addition to knowing how to, understand how to operate in my Yiddishkeit, of course, all of those things, but the ultimate goal is one of Yiras Shamayim. The ultimate goal is one of relationship. If that's how I approach my Torah, the Torah becomes the greatest elixir in life. But if I leave HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of the mix, and I leave HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of the process, then Chas v'shalom Torah could actually become a destructive force. An incredible yisod. The Gemara goes right to Yiras Hashem Torah Medes La'ad. Literally, reference of Hashem is Tahar. It endures forever. Amar Rabbi Chani Rabba says very interesting. Zehalome Torah b'Torah. This refers to someone who learns Torah in purity. Ma'hi Rabba, so what does it mean to learn Torah in purity? No se'isha va'achar kach lo me Torah. It means a person gets married first and then they learn. The idea being that when a person is married, he has a permissible outlet for his desires, and therefore again his mind is not distracted by satisfying his desires. As opposed to if a person tries to learn, and again, they don't have a permissible outlet for their desires, it could become a very great distraction and derail one from learning. But I'll say, by the way, in general, this is a fundamental machlokes in Chazal about what the proper order in life is, right? Should you get married first and then learn? Should you learn first and then get married? Because as much as the Gemara over here is highlighting the benefit of getting married first and then learning, there's also like a little side issue, which is having to support a family. It's a minor detail, but lamaisa, like, it's still there. So it's very nice that a person has a permissible outlet to satisfy their desires, but at the end of the day, now you also have the yoke of parnasa, right? Which a single person may not have. So I'm just pointing out here the Gemara is being very definitive, but just know that throughout the Chazal often have this machlokes as to what is the proper derech in life: marriage and then learning and then marriage. Okay, so the Gemara says Eidos Hashem ne'emana. What does it mean? That ultimately, again, the statutes of God are ne'emana, are trustworthy. Ne'emana hi laha'id b'lomdeha. We'll say, how incredible is this, by the way? Torah comes to testify about those who learn it. I will say, meaning what? I will say, listen to how beautiful this is. Rashi says, we'll say, you know what happens after 120? What happens after 120? Person comes up to Shemayim, and I will say, again, Beis Din Shel Mala calls witnesses to testify about a person's life. So we'll say, who one of the witnesses who shows up? One of the witnesses who shows up is Yoma Ayin Beis. Yoma Ayin Beis shows up, and Chashra says, "No, Yoma Ayin Beis, tell me a little bit about Silver. Tell me a little bit about him." And I will say, the shayla is, how did I learn Yoma Ayin Beis? How did I learn it? What did I do with it? What did I do with it? Right? Did I kind of breeze through it? I know it's the wrong thing to say in a Daf Yomi shir, right? But right, did I just kind of like blow through it, or did I let it penetrate my soul? Did I let it change me? Did I let the words imprint on my neshama? So that's what it means when the Gemara says over here that ne'emanahi laha'id b'lamdeha. And we'll say, how incredible is it? Because in Meretz Hashem, after 120, every daf that we learn is going to come to show up and testify about us. Now, it's true. Some of them might say, I think he was asleep for most of it, right? Or some of it might say, you know what, I was tumantara. We always get the short end of the stick, the tumantara dapim. I always say, but you know what? How incredible is it that when you come up to Shamayim, all of the dapim are going to be lining up. It's going to be a huge queue of dapim, testifying about us one after the other. Yeah, okay, some will have more glowing remarks, some will be less glowing remarks, but they're all going to say, he was there. He was there. Right, he showed up. He learned me. That's Torah testifies. Torah gives testimony about Lomder. It was an incredible yesod. So the Gemara goes right there. Ma'aserokim. So we'll say back to Mishkan. Torah says that the curtains were the work of an embroiderer. So Ma'aseh Choshev, Amar Belazar, Shirok b'makom shechoshin. But we'll say this is incredible. So what does it mean? Ma'aserokim, Ma'aseh Choshev. It means we'll say that when they would sew images on the curtains, first they would outline it, right? They would outline the image, and then they would go, Rashi says over here, Rashi says, Barok mishamakom shechoshvin, betchila metakin atzura ala beged, ayidei tseva, va'achakach rok ma b'machat. Essentially, first what they did is they outlined the image with some type of color, and then afterwards embroidered it, afterwards sewed it. Which I will say, if you think about the incredible musar in that, which is in life, before you accomplish something, you have to have a plan. Right? There has to be an outline. Because if you just start sewing, and you just start weaving, and you just start coloring, it's not clear exactly what you're trying to do. But Lamaisa, if you first make an outline, right? As the Gemara says, I will say this is a mantra for life. Sherokmim b'makom shechoshvin. That ultimately, again, first you go ahead and outline what you want to accomplish. Then you go in and fill it in. Tanam Shed Rabbi Nechemia, Rokim Ma'asemechat. Rokim also means needlework, sewing. Lefichach Pirtzov Echad. We'll say therefore when you sew something, it's one image, right? It's the same image on the front and the back. Choshev Ma'ase Oreg. Choshev on the other hand is weaving. And weaving, the Gemara says, Lefichach Shnei Pertzufos. So we'll say, Rashi points out that when they would weave, they would actually go ahead and have two pieces of attached fabric, so that when you would weave something, you would have two separate sides, and there would be a different image on both sides, and then those two sides were combined into one. So when it was sewing, it was the same image back and forth, just opposite. But when it was weaving, ultimately, again, two different panels, two different images, then brought together. Beilu Nisham Urim Tumim. So we'll say the Gemara is now going to talk about a little bit about Urim Tumim, which is really quite fascinating. So the Gemara says, Ki Asur Abdimi Amar Begadim Shekoin Gadol Misham Mishuach Mecham Misham Mishpan. We'll say a totally interesting side note over here. The Gemara says the Begadim of the Kohen Gadol. Remember again, the Kohen Gadol wears 8 unique garments. Now, not all of them are unique. In other words, 4 of them a regular Kohen wears also. But the idea over here is the unique clothing of a Kohen Gadol are also worn by the Kohen Mashuach Nochama. The Kohen Mashuach Nochama was the Kohen who was anointed for a specific purpose, to lead the army out into war. Right? I will say again, his job was to go ahead and inspire the people. Remember, his job was also to list off the exemptions. Right? People at first who shouldn't go out to battle at all, people who were on the battlefront and then should go home. That was the Mashuach Nochama's job. So the Gemara says over here, Rav Dimi comes along and says that the Mashuach Nochama wears the same begadim as the Kohen Gadol. Shnei Amar, u'bigdi HaKodesh shali Aaron yulabanav acharav. Right, the Bigdi HaKodesh, the sanctified clothing that are Aaron, will be to his children after him. Lemi sheba bigdula acharav. It also, so meaning who wears the clothing of Aaron the Kohen Gadol? To the Kohen who is the next greatest under Aaron. Who's the Kohen who's next greatest under Aaron? So the Gemara is positing over here that refers to the Mashuach Milchama. That the Kohen Mashuach Milchama is an anointed status below Kohen Gadol, but above Kohen Hedyot. Masiv Ravad Bar Ava Armi Leikadi. Yachol Yehei Beno Shal Mashuach Milchama Mishamish Tachtav. We'll say you might have thought that the position of Mashuach Milchama was an inherited position. The Gemara says, Keder Shaveno Shal Kohen Gadol Mishamish Tachtav. Say we'll say that literally Kahuna Gedola, if the son of the Kohen Gadol is Roi, then he inherits his father's position. Talmud Lomar, Shivas Yomim Yil B'Shem HaKohen Tachtav Mibanov, Asher Yavo El Oel Moed. So the Gemara darshans, Misharoi Lavo El Moed. Ultimately, again, it is only a son who is fit to come into the Oel Moed, which means the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Meaning only the position of the Kuna Gedola, which is inherited by a son, if the son is Roi. But the position of Mashuach Nochama is not inherited. Vim Isa Michsa Chazi. Now, I will say, if you are truly correct that the Mashuach Milchama wears the same begadim as the Kohen Gadol, then what? Then the Mashuach Milchama should also be fit technically speaking, to enter into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Kachikam, this is what it means to say, Kol she'ikar mishichasa li'ol moed. We'll say, who ultimately, again, inherits his position to his son if the son is Ro'i? The one who was anointed for primary service inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the Kohen Gadol. But this comes to exclude the Mashuach Milchama, ultimately again, whose Ikar anointment is not for the Kodesh HaKadoshim, but whose Ikar anointment is for war. So Meisi Gemara is the Kasha, Mashuach Milchama Edom Meshamish Lo Ba'arba Kekohen Hedjot, V'lo B'shmona Kekohen Gadol. It was an interesting Braisa. Braisa says the Mashuach Milchama does not go ahead and wear the 4 garments of a regular Kohen, nor does he wear the 8 garments of a Kohen Gadol. So I'm going to Abaye, Elazar Mashisle. So what are you saying? So then you're making the Mashuach Milchama like a non-Kohen, right? You're relegating him to the status of a Yisrael. So what does he wear? So Ella b'Kohen Gadol. So we'll say, why doesn't he wear? So let's analyze. Ella b'Kohen Gadol mishum Eva. We'll say he does not wear the same begadim of a Kohen Gadol because of Eva. We'll say Eva means animosity, but really what it means is jealousy. Is jealousy. And also we have this concept of Ein Shtei Malachim Mishtam Shem V'Keser Achas, right? 2 kings can't share the same crown. So the idea being the Kohen Gadol is the Kohen Gadol. If you have another person wearing the begadim of the Kohen Gadol, people are people. We'll say even the Kohen Gadol is a person. And at the end of the day, it's just going to create animosity. So therefore, the Mashuach Milchama can't wear the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Hedjot, Mishum Alam Mekadosh Shomaridin. And we'll see also can't wear the clothing of a Kohen Hedjot. Why not? Why not? Because remember, he's of elevated status above the Kohen Hedyot. So if that's the case, that if he's been elevated to a higher status, it doesn't make sense to then go ahead and have him wear the clothing of a Kohen Hedyot. Amar le'Rav Ada bar Abba, Amar le'Rav Ada bar Abba, l'Rava, v'haytana d'les le'Eva, v'lo kameshamesh. But one second, we'll say there is another Tana, ultimately again, who does not hold of the concept of Eva. In other words, he does not hold that Allah L'maisa is an animosity issue, and yet we still see that the Mashuach Milchama does not wear the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. The Sanya. We'll say, where do we see this? The Sanya, listen to this. Dvarim shebein Kohen Gadol, Kohen Hedjot. These are the things that distinguish between a Kohen Gadol and a Kohen Hedjot. Par Kohen Mashiach or par Abba Kol HaMitzvos. So we'll say, so number one, remember the Kohen Gadol brings a unique carbon in the event that he issued an erroneous halachic ruling and acted on that ruling. That unique carbon is only brought by a Kohen Gadol, not by Mashuach Milchama. Par Yom Kippurim, the Par of Yom Kippur, Asir Sa'ifa, which we'll say is the unique carbon mincha brought by the Kohen Gadol. Lo Poreh v'lo Poreh. Similarly, we'll say Kohen Gadol, if Chas Shalom he loses one of his close relatives, he does not allow his hair to grow, nor does he rip his clothing. Avaporim hu milamata. But what he does, Rabbi, so the Kohen Gadol, is he'll tear his clothing at the bottom hem. So it's a non-recognizable tear. He'll tear at the bottom hem. Vahedyot milamala. But a Kohen Hedyot, of course, tears at the top of his clothing. V'imitam the krobov. Kohen Gadol does not go ahead and become tamei even for his close relative. First white line, Rabbi say, umitzava ala besula. He has to marry a besula. Umusra ala almana. He can't marry an almana. Umachzias haratzeach. And when he dies, the accidental murderers, the accidental killers go free from the Ir Miklat. Umakriv onein, and he has the ability to offer up karbanos even in a state of aninos. Ve'eno ochel, ve'eno cholek. But I will say, if he's in a state of aninos, as much as he has the right to go ahead and offer up karbanos, he does not eat karbanos, nor does he receive a share in karbanos. V'notel chelik barosh, and Kohen Gadol could go into the Beis HaMikdash and take any of the Kohanic portions at any time. Umakriv chelik barosh. He also has the ability to offer up karbanos whenever he pleases. Umeshamish b'shmona kelim. He wears 8 garments. Upatra al tumas mikdash v'kadashav. And ultimately, again, he is pater for inadvertent tuma in the Beis HaMikdash. V'chalavodus Yom Kippurim eno ksheros elabo. And ultimately, again, all of the Yom Kippur avodah can only be done through him. So I'll say these are all the unique aspects of the Kohen Gadol. Watch this. The kulon nogos b'meruba b'begadim. Now we'll say there are 2 ways that you could anoint a Kohen Gadol. Right, classic way, shemen hamishcha, anointing oil. Non-classic way is meruba begadim, which means he puts on the clothing of the Kohen Gadol, and that makes him the Kohen Gadol. So everything we just said, all of the distinctions of the Kuna Gidola apply equally to a Kohen who is meruba begadim. Chutz mi paraba kol mitzvos, with the exception ultimately of what? Of the paraba kol mitzvos. V'kulon noagos b'mashuach sha'avar. And I will say all of these also apply. I will say mashuach sha'avar means a skan who became the Kohen Gadol. Right? Let's say you have a simple case. Kohen Gadol became Tameh. What happens when that occurs? Skan, the replacement steps in. Then the Kohen Gadol becomes Tar. What happens to the Skan? What happens to the Skan? Emeritus. We'll say, what do you do as emeritus? Very little, right? Meaning at the end of the day, I guess you wave at people, right? You smile. It's a good job, right? You wave at people, you say hello, right? You look holy. But lamaisa, there's no actual capacity. That's Mashuach Sha'avar. So all of what we said applies to Mashuach Sha'avar. Chutz mipar Yom Kippurim vasira saifa. But also here's the part we're focusing on. V'chulan ein noagos Mashuach Milchama. None of these items apply to the Mashuach Milchama. So we'll say, what do you see according to this brayso? The Mashuach Milchama is not treated like the Kohen Gadol. None of this applies to Mashuach Milchama. Chutz michamisha dvar ma'amurim beparsha. But with the exception of these 5 things, lo porei v'lo porei, the Mashuach Milchama also, if chas shalom, one of his close relatives dies, he does not allow his hair to grow. He does not go ahead and rend his clothing. Nor does he become tummy to his relatives. He also has to marry a basula. And he's not allowed to marry an amona. Well, say, interestingly enough, according to Rabbi Yehuda, when the Mashuach Milchama dies, people could come back from the Ir Miklat as a result of his death. The Chacham say no, Eino Machzir. At the end of the day, his death does not return anyone. So we'll say, so what do you see from here? That the Mashuach Milchama ultimately is not treated like the Kohen Gadol. To which the Gemara says, Ki lesle Eva b'dekavase, b'dezuter minei islay. So we'll say, interestingly enough, this is actually a really fascinating statement. The Gemara says over here, when do we not have Eva? When is there no problem of Eva? When you have 2 people in a peer-like relationship, equals. When is there Eva? Ultimately, again, when someone of a lower station is being accorded the honor of a person of a higher station. So I will say, look at Rashi for just a moment. It's Rashi in the wide lines, about 4 lines in. Ki les le'eva b'tekavase, mashuach sha'avar gadol haya kamoso. Ava mashuach milchama dezutar minei choshesh le'eva. So I will say, this is very interesting. Where is there Eva, or where was there no Eva? In the mashuach sha'avar. Right? In a case where you had a Kohen Gadol, he was the Kohen Gadol, there's no Eva between the acting Kohen Gadol and the former Kohen Gadol. Why? Because to a certain degree they're equals. Where is there Eva? There's Eva potential for, I shouldn't say where is there potential for Eva between the Kohen Gadol and the Mashuach Milchama. Because we'll say if you start dressing up the Mashuach Milchama in the begadim of the Kohen Gadol is going to be what is that? Right? He's not the Kohen Gadol. He's important. He has a capacity. That's where there's Eva. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, we would not go ahead and clothe the Mashuach Milchama in the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. Yasser Rabbi Avav, v'kamalei la'ashmaisa, mishrid Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Avav went ahead and said over this ruling in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. He said, right? Adrinu Rabbi Amir Rabbi Asi la'payu. And Rabbi Amir Rabbi Asi turned away. They were displeased with this ruling. Others say, Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amra. Others say Rabbi Chia bar Abba said, Adrinu Rabbi Amir Rabbi Asi la'payu. Rabbi Amir Rabbi Asi turned away. Maskef Rapapa. So Rapapa said, Bishlam Rabbi Avav mishum yakar de bekesar. I understand if it was Rabbi Avo and they didn't want to confront him that his ruling was wrong, because Rabbi Avo was very tight with the Caesar, and therefore they did not want to publicly disagree with him. But if it was Rabbi Chia, then ultimately, again, let them just say to him, by the way, Rabbi Yochanan never actually said this. Okay, we'll say, so it's left as a kasha. Bottom line, halacha l'maisa, the Kohen Mashuach Milchama does not wear the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. But also, by the way, I just want to point out, there's another interesting related discussion over here, which is, remember, both say, where does the Kohen Mashuach Milchama operate primarily? Where does he operate? Outside of the Beis HaMikdash. But remember again, we had a whole sugi about what? Wearing Bigdei Kahuna outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Now again, the Pashtos, he's an exception to this rule, but he is not wearing the begadim of the Kohen Gadol. He's wearing the begadim, ultimately again, of a Kohen Hedyot. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Ki Aser Rabin, and Rabin came along. Amar Nishal Itmar. Ultimately, again, I will say, if you take a look, look at Rashi. Ki asa Rabin Amar lav mishamish bain itmar ela nishal bahin itmar begadim shekohen gadol mishamish v'amashua machal nishal. We'll say when Rabin came along, he said, no, you're dealing with the wrong sugya. The discussion of Rabbi say is, this is actually very interesting. The Rabin is assuming that maybe the kohen mashuach milchama, where's the Urim v'Tumim? We'll say, remember again, it appears that the Urim v'Tumim were consulted most when going out to war. That's what the Urim v'Tumim were used for. Should we go out to war? Will we be successful in war? So it's interesting. Rabin seems to say, if the Mashuach Milchama was wearing the Urim v'Tumim, does he wear all of the other begadim of the Kohen Gadol as well? Nishal itmar. Tamin al-Hachir, that supports this. Begadim shekohen Gadol mishamish ban Mashuach Milchama nishal bahen. Right, so that supports this. The begadim that a Kohen Gadol wears when doing service in the Mikdash are the same begadim the Mashuach Milchama wears when he's wearing the Urim v'Tumim and being consulted, or he's not being consulted, Moshe is being consulted about going out to war. Tan Rabbanan. So let's analyze this. As I was just you should know, halacha l'maisa, the Mashuach Milchama did not wear the Urim v'Tumim. It was the Kohen Gadol who wore the Urim v'Tumim, and it was the Kohen Gadol who was consulted. So the Mashuach Milchama does not wear the begadim of the Kohen Gadol, nor does he wear the Urim v'Tumim. So we'll say, let's analyze. The Gemara goes weiter. Tan Rabbanan, Keitzad Shoal, and Rabbi says this is fascinating. How do you ask the Urim v'Tumim a question? Hashoal panav klape nishal. So we'll say the person asking the question would face the Kohen Gadol. V'anishal panav klape shchina. And the Kohen Gadol who was wearing the choshen, right? Remember again, just to explain very quickly, the choshen was the breastplate. 12 stones on the breastplate. It was mounted on a plate of gold. That plate of gold itself was also attached to a fabric backing. That fabric backing had a fold. Inside of that fold was a piece of parchment with the 72-letter name of the Ribono Shel Olam. That parchment with the fold, or that parchment with the name, that was like the spiritual battery of the Urim v'Tumim. So what would happen? Somebody would come to ask the question. But remember, it's not just somebody. We saw in the Mishnah, who could ask the Urim v'Tumim? Who could ask? The Melech, right? The Av Beis Din, right? Somebody who the tzibor needs. That could be like the leader of the army, right? Or the Kohen Gadol, of course, himself could also ask. So what would happen? The king shows up, let's say, he's facing the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol, the Gemara says, is panav klape shchina, is facing the shchina. What does it mean facing the shchina? Rashi points out, the Kohen Gadol would look down. He would look down. So his face is facing the Shechina, facing the Urim v'Tumim. Hashol Omer, so the person who asked the question says, Erdov acharei gedud hazeh. Should I pursue this army? Gedud means a group, right? So because we will say again, primarily the questions that were asked were about military operations. Should I go ahead and pursue this enemy? Vanishal Omar, and the Kohen Gadol would say, Ko amar Hashem, Allah v'hatzlach. This is what Hashem said, go up and be successful. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein tzarich lomar Ko amar Hashem. You actually don't have to add in the phrase Ko amar Hashem. That's pretty obvious. Ela Allah v'hatzlach. Rather, the answer would be go and be successful. Ein sholin bakal. This is incredible. You don't ask the question. Let's say the king is asking. You don't ask in a loud voice. Shene emar v'sha'al lo. You shall ask him the Kohen Gadol. So meaning the voice that you're asking in should only be audible to the Kohen Gadol. So like a shtickle whisper. V'lo mahar her belibo, but you have to articulate. So you can't just think the question. You have to actually articulate or enunciate the question in a low voice. Shnei amar v'sha'alo lifnei Hashem. Ele kederech sha'amra chana b'tfilasa. We'll say this is truly beautiful. How do you ask the Urim v'Tumim? We'll say who models for us, again in general, who models for us prayer? Chana. The beginning of Shmuel Aleph, where Chana is davening in a heartbroken way for a child. Shneimar, v'Chana hi midaberes aliba. Chana speaks to her heart. So we'll say, and again, Chazal tell us over there that she whispered her tefillah. So loud enough for her to hear, and maybe for a person standing right next to her to hear. So to when asking the Urim v'Tumim, an audible whisper. Ein sholin shtei dvarim ke'achad. Rabbi say you can't go ahead and ask two questions at once. V'imshal, and if you did ask two questions about the Urim v'Tumim, ein machzirin ela echad. You only get one answer. Ve'ein machzirin ela rishon. and you only get the answer to the first question. Shene'emar, hayaskiruni bale kila biado, hayered Shaul. So we'll say this is David HaMelech when he's hiding in the city of Keilah, right? This is before he became king. He's a fugitive now. And so Shaul is coming with an army to track him down. Ev Yasser HaKohen escaped from the city of Nov, right? And he had the Urim Tumim with him. So David asked the Urim Tumim. And he says, literally again, are the people of Keilah going to turn on me and hand me over to Shaul? And is Shaul coming down to attack? So we'll say, so the Gemara says, Vayomer Hashem Yered. Hashem says Shaul is coming down to attack. So we'll say, so David HaMelech asked two questions, and he only got the answer to one. But here's the problem. But you said that when you ask two questions, you only what? You get the answer to one, and which one? Number one. Yet David HaMelech asked two questions, got the answer to one, but which one did he get the answer to? Question number two. So the Gemara says, David Shaul on the base, Shalo Keseder. Because David asked in the wrong order. The Heshiv Lo Keseder. Well, so in other words, how should David have asked the question? Question number one should have been what? Is Shaul coming down? Question number two is, will the people of Keilah hand me over? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered him one, and answered him the question that should have been asked first. Once David realized that he asked in the wrong order, Chazar v'shal Keseder, Shneimar hayaskirni ba'al Keilah osi v'ez anashai biad shal v'yomer Hashem yaskiru. Good. But I will say, if the two questions were immediately urgent, and therefore you needed to ask both of them now, and needed both answers now, machzir lo shnayim. Then ultimately you could ask two, and you get two answers. Shnei amar, vayishal David b'Hashem leimar, ha'erdof acharei ha'gedud hazeh ha'asigenu. Both say this is the battle of Amalek. David says, should I run after this enemy, and will I be successful? Because both questions are equally important. Should I go? Will I be successful? And to that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vayomer lo Hashem Redof, ki aseg tasil, v'atzel tatzil. Ultimately, again, so see, there's an example of where David asked two questions, received two answers, ultimately, again, because both were immediately necessary. So we'll say, so first I'll just point out, it's so fascinating. What do you see from here? There's an incredible hashkafa with this. We'll say, when you are lifnei Hashem, the most important thing is Seder. There's a Seder, right? We'll say, the most important thing in general in life to be successful is Seder, to have an order, to have a mahalech. The same way you saw before. When they made the curtains, first you outlined the design, then you saw it. When you come and you dialogue and you're before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you ask like this. There's a Seder. The closer you are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more Seder is absolutely necessary. This goes back to our entire Masechta of Yoma. Right? If you look at Yom Kippur, what's the essence of Yom Kippur? Everything is scripted. And I will say, what happens if you break the script? Well, it depends. Right? The closer you are to Hashem, the higher, or I should say, the greater the fallout of breaking the Seder, right? If you break the Seder in the Kodesh, that's one thing. You break the Seder in Kodesh HaKadoshim Chas v'Shalom, that's Misa. Because if you want to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a person has to have a Seder, a person has to be organized, a person has to have a Mahalach, a person has to have a plan about how they are approaching, a person has to have a Seder about how they ask. The Gemara goes weiter. Well, say, even though the words of a Navi are subject to change, Gezeras Urim Etum in a Chozer. So we'll say the words of the Urim Etum, whatever the Urim Etum say, that's what remains. So we'll say, by the way, it's incredible. Where do you see that the words of the Navi change? Rashi quotes over here, Kigon Yona ben Amitai. And we'll say, this is incredible. What's the greatest story of prophetic change? Or I should say, the words of a prophet being subject to change? Sefer Yona. Right? What did Yona say? Oh, dar boim yom v'ninvei ne'apachas. Oh, another 40 days, Nineveh is going to be destroyed. Was Nineveh destroyed? No, they did tshuva. So therefore, we'll say, you see from here, the words of a Navi are subject, which by the way, we'll say is fine, right? What Yonah was saying to them was, you're going to die if you don't change. But ultimately, again, whatever the Urim V'Tumim say, that is not subject to change. So why is it called V'lama Nikra Shman Urim V'Tumim? Why is it called Urim V'Tumim? Urim Shemeir Nestivrei. Urim because they illuminate their words. Tumim shemashlimin es divrayim. Tumim because we'll say what they say is complete. In other words, that whatever the Urim V'Tumim say is unequivocal truth. Is that true? The Gemara says, "V'in tomar begivas binyamin Mipnei ma lo hishlimu. So we'll say, but yet there's a story. We'll say there is the story of Pilegesh Begiva, which, without getting into the entirety of the story, is a tragic episode in Klal Yisrael's existence, where a woman was raped and ultimately died as a result of being abused by the men of Binyamin. The other tribes get together and go to war against Binyamin, ultimately with the intention, to a certain degree, of eradicating the tribe. So the Gemara says, so if you notice, the other tribes, when they consulted the Urim V'Tumim, the Urim V'Tumim said, go to battle, but yet they lost the first two battles. Right? In other words, the collective tribes lost the first two battles. So the Gemara says, Heim shelo bichnu im l'natzeach and lo l'natzeach. Uba'achrona shebichnu hiskimu shenemar. Upinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen omei lefana b'yom v'heim. Leimar ha'osif o l'azes l'mochama im b'nei binyamin achi im echdal. V'yomer Hashem alu ki machar etnenu biyadcha. Supposed to listen to this. So the Gemara says, that's because they asked the wrong way. They never asked if they were going to be successful. They just asked if they should go to battle. So we'll say, so this goes back to what we said before. In order for the Urim V'Tumim to be effective, you have to know how to ask. So we'll say, in general in life, it's interesting that if you want real answers, you always have to know how to ask the questions. So halachas kama v'kama, when you are lifnei Hashem, you have to know how to ask. They only asked, should we go? They never asked, are we going to be successful? Finally, the third time, Pinchas asks, are we going to be successful? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, yes. And sure enough, they win the third battle. Kate said Nasis. So we'll say this is fascinating. How did the Urim V'Tumim work? So we'll say, which means, how did it communicate a message? So I understand how you ask. I understand that process. How would you get the answer from the Urim V'Tumim? Rabbi Yochanan or Boletes. Rabbi Yochanan says that literally again, Boletes, so we'll say, means stick out. Rashi says over here, osios boltos. So what would happen? You would ask a question, and then letters would jut out. Those letters would then be combined to form words. And those words would be your answer from the Ribono Shalom. Rabbi Rish Lakish Omer mitztarfos. Rish Lakish says, ultimately again, the letters would combine. I will say, the Maharsha says that in reality, Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish they're not arguing. They're actually saying the same thing. The letters would go ahead and jut out, and then ultimately again, the Kohen Gadol would then take the letters and combine them into a word. Here's the problem. The Choshen, the letters on the Quran, remember again, what letters are we talking about? Remember, you have 12 stones with the names of the Shvatim. So those letters would jut out and form words. Here's the problem. You don't have the entire Aleph base on the Urim V'Tumim. On the Choshen, for example, Lo Ksivu Tzadik. Both say there's no Tzadik. Right? There's no Tzadik. There's no letter Tzadik in any of the names of the Shvatim. No, Avram Yitzchak V'Yakov Ksiv Sham. Both say it is incredible. In addition to the words of the names of the Shvatim, the names of the Avos were also on the stones of the Choshen. Avraham, Yitzchak, V'Yakov. V'halo Ksiv Tes, but there's still no Tes. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shifte Yeshurun Ksiv Sham. It also says Shifte Yeshurun, which also tells you something amazing. We often think that what was written on the 12 stones, right? Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. It's actually not true. In other words, it was written, but all of the combined letters of the names of the Shvatim, plus Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, plus Shifte Yeshurun, those letters were equally divided on 12 stones. So in fact, you don't have one stone per name. You ultimately are one name per stone. You have a conglomerate of letters equally divided between 12 stones. And what would happen is you would ask the question to the Ribono Shel Olam, and then what would occur? Allah Chalamaysa, the letters would jut out. And the Kohen Gadol would then be responsible for putting the letters together. So also I point out something absolutely amazing. If you think about this, well, let's just finish. The Gemara says, "Amar Rav Yaakov Shifti Yishugud Meisvei Kol Kohen Shenem Medaber B'Ruach Hakodesh Shechina Shorei Alav In Sholin Bo Shaharei Shal Tzaddik Va'Alsalo Ev Yasser V'Lo Alsalo Shneimar Vayal Ev Yasser Atom Kol Ha'am." Shabbos say, but 1 second. But the Brisa says that a Kohen, in other words, without Ruach HaKodesh, you cannot decipher the words of the Urim V'Tumim. In other words, or of the Choshen, I should say. Or we'll call it Urim V'Tumim. So we'll say, in other words, before you're making it sound like the letters bolt out. Bolt out, is that? Jut out, right? Jut out. Protrude. The letters protrude out, right? And you pretty much just organize the letters into words, and you can figure out what is the message from the Ribono Shalom. The Brisa says, no, the Kohen also has to possess Ruach HaKodesh, has to possess some level of divine spirit. That level of divine spirit allows him to put the letters together in a comprehensive message. The Gemara contrasts, Tzaddik HaKohen, for example, asked, and he was unable to understand what the Urim was saying. Ev Yasar, which are just the opposite. Tzaddik knew what it was saying. Ev Yasar did not know what it was saying. To which the Gemara says, "Siyuei havim se'eh b'hadayu." You're right. The Urim V'Tumim gave a message, but the Kohen had to understand how to interpret that message. Rashi says over "Siyuei havim Messiah Kohen b'hadi Urim V'Tumim hilchachim Kohen kasher haya for Elishra Shechina love haosios boltos chomistarfa." So we'll say if the Kohen had Ruach HaKodesh, he was able to put together the meaning of the message of the Urim V'Tumim. If he did not possess Ruach HaKodesh, he was unable to put together the message. I will say, what was the paradigmatic example of this? Paradigmatic example of this was Eli Cohen by Chana. Eli saw Chana. He did not know what she was doing. So he asked the Urim V'Tumim, the Gemara says. And what did the Urim V'Tumim, we'll say, what letters did the Urim V'Tumim project? Shin, Chaf, Reish, Hey. Shin, Chaf, Reish, Hey. Eli said, Shikora, she's drunk. But in fact, he was wrong, because the letters were Ksheira. But the Kohen Gadol has to know how to decipher the message. Shavuos is so incredibly profound. Because you know what it teaches us? In life, rarely are there direct, clear messages from the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to us all of the time. But Lamaisa, you have to know. Remember it used to be in the cereal boxes? They used to give away like the decoder rings, right? It's great, and you'd spill out the whole box in order to get the decoder ring that was worth, like, it had like a negative value. That's a little bit, but it was exciting. You look at it backwards, look at this. Let's say, so it's the same thing in life. It's the same thing in life. The Moshe speaks to us all of the time and provides us messages all of the time, including to the Kohen Gadol. But Lamaisa, you have to know how to decipher it. The signs are around us all the time. But this goes back to what we learned before. If I learn Torah, and the intention of my Torah is for Yiras Shamayim, then I have the proper decoder ring. But without the proper decoder ring, not only do you not understand the messages, but sometimes Chas v'Shalom, you could even get the messages wrong. Let's just finish. I know that it's late. Let's just finish the end of the parak. Vein Sholem El Lamelech. And remember again, not anyone is permitted to consult the Urim V'Tumim. Only a Melech, only an Av Beis Din, only someone with the Tzibur needs. Where do we know this from? Amar Rabbi Yavod, Amar Kra, Lifnei Elazar HaKohen Yamod V'Shalom Mishpat HaUrim. So we'll say he will stand before Elazar HaKohen and he will ask, who's the who? Zem Melech, that refers to the king. V'chol B'nei Yisrael Ito, and all of Joshua with him, Zeh Mashuach Milchama. This refers ultimately to the Kohen Mashuach Milchama. V'chol HaEdah, and who is the Edah? Zu Sanhedrin. Only those individuals, we'll say, ultimately are permitted to go ahead and ask of the Kohen Gadol. We'll say Mazel Tov, Yashakayach, Hadrin Alach, Ba Lo Kohen Gadol, Mazel Tov.